with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
What's going on, JMU Nation? It's Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice, your host of another episode of To the House. I am joined by my good friend, my buddy, my friend, my pal, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, a.k.a. the EPA King. What's going on, Jack?
You know, I was like looking forward to seeing how many different ways you could say friend. I was bummed we only got 3 there, but doing well. Did you see on the ESPN broadcast, they promoted the podcast on the bottom ticker after every touchdown? It said To the House.
I saw that and I was like, you know what, man, we are blowing up. That means we are going to the next level. And speaking of next level, man, I got to give a shout out to JMU football for a very, very gritty and gutsy performance down in Norfolk, Virginia. Jack, I know you were watching on television. I wish we both could have been there, but what a game. That was a gritty, gutsy performance. What did you think?
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Be sure to subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network so you never miss an episode. We are your exclusive home for To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce and the JMU Sports News Podcast with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon. New episodes of To the House drop every Monday, and new episodes of the JMU Sports News Podcast drop in the middle of every week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and YouTube so you never miss an episode.
I mean, finally, we're getting some good games with not finally, but I mean, that first game in 22 down in Norfolk wasn't a good game by any means. JMU dominated them. Then last year, ODU was a fine football team. That game was good, but like you didn't feel like this rivalry was anything too crazy. Then this game, 35-32, insane back and forth, heavyweight type of feel. Ricky Ronnie's yelling F you across the sideline to Bob Chesney to start the second half. I mean, it finally felt like a rivalry.
I'm glad you saw that because, you know, I'm looking at this. I'm like, yo, why is this dude so hype about his team recovering the surprise onside kick? Like he was emotionally disturbed in that moment. And you know what? Good for him, man. I love it. And you know what else I loved? I loved AB3's comments after the game. And I'm so glad that JMU football put that on their social. And if you missed it, go back, find JMU's social, JMU football, and watch AB3 walking off the field in that game saying, we own the state of VA. VA runs through Harrisonburg. I loved it, man. And you know what? I got to say, it's not really, you know, I didn't really grow up like, you know, that type of trash talk, that bulletin board type of stuff. But you know what, man? I am sick of JMU playing little brother. I love that we've got a signal caller who is that brash, who is willing to say, we run VA unapologetically. And if I am a recruit, if I am a kid who is looking at both ODU and James Madison for potential places where I'm going to spend the next 4 or 5 years of my life, I'm saying I want to go play for that dude. I loved it.
His brashness when he is playing well is the coolest thing to see. His swagger reminds me of the Ben DiNucci swagger with the finger guns. His swagger is almost to another level where he's he's scoring touchdowns. He scored that 8-yard rush to essentially put the game to bed late in the fourth quarter. And he signals to the fans, night, night. He jumps into the end zone. He does the jump man as he crosses the goal line. I mean, the dude got swagger. The dude is QB1. He's a bona fide star. And kind of, I guess this whole time when on this podcast, on the Jamie Sports News podcast, we've been defending Alonzo. We've been going to bat for him time and time again when certain fans are questioning his ability. That swagger you see is why he will go down if he stays his entire college career at JMU. That swagger is why he will be the greatest quarterback in a I almost said an NFL history. Whoa, in JMU history.
Yeah. And by the way, that was a Freudian slip. I do think the guy is an NFL player one day. Like I really do believe he's on that trajectory.
He was making NFL type throws. If he was 6'2", I think he would for sure be in that conversation without a doubt. The fact he's 6 foot, I think some people are going to doubt him a little bit, but we've seen what the shorter quarterbacks have been able to do. Russell Wilson is the first to come to mind, Brock Purdy even. But I mean, he was making those far sideline, outside hash, opposite field types of throws time and time and time again. And that's impressive to see out of a redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, totally. Well, he's got the arm strength, but he's also got the quick release. And if he didn't have the quick release, he couldn't throw the ball all the way across the field, because even if he's got the arm strength, if it doesn't come out fast enough, the defender has an opportunity to get there and break those passes up. I thought the dude played phenomenal. So AB3, talk your ish, right? Now, I got to say, if you say it though, you got to own it, right? Because every Virginia team that we play from now on, as long as AB3 is the quarterback, they're going to play that clip in the locker room before the game, right? That is literally the definition of bulletin board material. And if you think about who's on the schedule for next year, right? We got Liberty. We got to go to Liberty next year, right? Finally, because I think they beat us the last time we played them in 2014 under Everett Withers, the guy that lost literally to Liberty first round of the playoffs one year, and then Colgate the first round of the playoffs the next year, right? Am I making this up?
No, you're right. I think Colgate was technically the second round because they had a first round bye, I think. But first game in the playoffs, the dude fell to Liberty and Colgate.
Like two of the worst playoff losses in JMU football history. By the way, I heard that Withers is now the interim head coach at Temple. Did you see that? He is.
And former JMU offensive coordinator Shane Montgomery is the interim head coach at UMass.
Get out of here. Well, good for him. That's awesome. Listen, do you make good on your career? But you didn't help us out in the playoffs when you were at James Madison. Now, so we got Liberty next year. We also obviously have ODU coming to the Berg next year, but we also have Virginia Tech in 2026. And you know that they've been, licking their chops ever since we went into Lane Stadium and just literally almost spoiled their season, except they went to the Orange Bowl that year. Right. So they got back on track and actually had a really good season. So they are all going to play that clip of AB3. But I love it. You know what? We're not little brother. It's James Madison University. We are big brother in VA. VA is purple. Now, the other thing that, I thought about is that, for AB3, I follow him on Instagram. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram. I felt like this game meant a lot more to him. If you watch that last touchdown that he scored, how hype he was, he runs off the field. He's like, yo, we did it. Takes his helmet off. He's celebrating. He was fired up. And I feel like it meant a lot more to him because of what he put on his Instagram story. And for those of you who missed it, because it gets deleted after 24 hours, he essentially posts a picture of himself in an Old Dominion uniform, like he's in high school being recruited by ODU. And he says, I'll never forget what they did to you. And then he said something about got to get that get back. So Jack Fitzpatrick, you are my investigative reporter. What do you have on that situation? Tell me why that was so important.
I'm a little upset that ODU doesn't have robust recruiting information in terms of people covering their recruiting, because I want to know if he was ever given a I don't know, because they were his first offer in August of 2020. They were his first Division I offer. Georgia State, Army, NC Charlotte, a bunch of these other schools then came to the table after that. But there's got to be something more, because plenty of kids get offers, and that feels like he was offered and had his offer rescinded, or feels like he was promised something and then it was all taken back from him. Um,
Mm.
it feels like there's a lot more to this story than just like, oh, they offered him and then things didn't go his way and he picked JMU. Feels like they potentially offered him a lot and had maybe rescinded an offer at the last second.
Yeah, it feels like they probably did him dirty. And if I had to venture a guess, and by the way, this is literally just an inference from the people's choice, I would guess that maybe they offered him and then, bait and switched him and said, all right, we want you to play cornerback or we want you to play safety. Like, I mean, it just feels like that. Now, I also, it sucks because it also may mean that JMU was kind of his second choice, right? If he really had his heart set on ODU. But I'm glad the guy is here because he had a phenomenal game. We're going to break that down a little bit more in a second. But this win for JMU breaks the tie in this year's Royal Rivalry, right? So, if for those of you who don't know, the Royal Rivalry presented by Town Bank, I guess, is literally. And what is Town Bank? I mean, what is that? We couldn't get AUB, like the Atlantic Union Bank, like on the docket for the Royal Rivalry. Are they out of sponsorship dollars?
They're probably out of sponsorship dollars after footing the bill for the AUBC, the bank.
So the Royal Rivalry, it's a running tab of who's winning between Old Dominion and James Madison throughout the year in all sports. And we were tied 3-3 going into this game. So now after this win, it's 4-3 JMU. Now, I also got to say, man, I was very impressed watching on television. I was very impressed with ODU's facilities. And I don't know if I just had not paid attention because on the broadcast, they said that those facilities were upgraded in 2019. I don't remember ever seeing those facilities that nice. Like, I thought it was spectacular. So I know you're closer to that program. Did they, when was that stadium renovation?
It happened in 2019, but I think they added I think they've been adding kind of things here and there over the last couple of years. In this last offseason, I believe they put the finishing touches on that stadium. But I think the real key is that they have a lot more fan support than they've had in years past. They've done a really good job of getting that student population involved and excited about the team. You saw the student section was packed out. They did a great job. They have just a lot more people caring. Will be interesting to see how much they care after this week, because it seems like they've soured on Ricky Ronnie just a little bit down there in Norfolk. But I think they've slowly but surely have added to it. The main renovation came in 2019, and SB Ballard Stadium has been kind of one of the top tier Sunbelt stadiums, if you ask me.
Yeah, I thought it was beautiful, man. I think they did a really good job. I know that they put something in the end zone back when they had like the clamshell sort of shaped stadium. You remember that? It was like a clamshell, but they still had the really nice end zone renovation where they had like the luxury suites. And now it all looks very, very uniform. I was really impressed. So, I mean, I got to say, bro, if I'm a recruit, I go to Norfolk and I'm like, yo, this looks pretty nice, especially to your point with the fan support. And so, you know what? I think to the other point of what you just said, that's all we wanted. Like, we wanted a conference where other teams cared about football. And at least for the Sun Belt East, save for Georgia State, every team in the Sun Belt East has a caring, passionate fan base that we can sort of build some rivalries around, which I think is super dope. Now, of course, speaking of the Sun Belt East, Georgia Southern is doing right now what Georgia Southern does, and they are falling apart at the end of another season. So as you saw, Georgia Southern, they go down. I mean, they almost did this against South Alabama a few weeks ago, but they go down, they lose to like 2-7 Troy. Like, wasn't Troy 2-7 at that point.
Yeah. Troy
Like,
stinks.
yeah, Troy. I mean, but Troy is actually peaking right now, it seems. Troy also has another big game this week. Like, does Troy play Louisiana this week, I think?
Could they be the massive spoilers of it all?
The massive spoilers. And so now that win, that Georgia Southern loss puts Marshall, who only has one conference loss, to Georgia Southern, by the way, a massive sort of, come from behind victory for Georgia Southern in that Marshall game. But Marshall now is in first place in the Sun Belt East because now they only have one loss in the Sun Belt. And all we need, and by the way, we always say this, the team can't look ahead, but we certainly can. All we need is for Georgia Southern to lose one more game, and that could possibly happen this week because I think they go to Coastal Carolina, and we control our own destiny. That on 11, if we beat App State and we beat Marshall, we are in the Sun Belt Championship. That's amazing. And for what it's worth, Louisiana, they went down and somehow lost to South Alabama, right?
Yeah.
They lost to South Alabama. They unfortunately lost their starting quarterback, and I feel terrible for this kid. He broke his collarbone. He's having an amazing season in his 7th year of college football. To have that kind of injury is like super unfortunate. We wish him well. And so now they are going into their last 2 games of the season without a starting quarterback. And so there is still an opportunity. Again, we can look ahead. The team cannot. But there is an opportunity for JMU, for the Mullet, for Bridgeforth to somehow host the Sun Belt Championship game. Wouldn't that be special?
It's there. The path is there for all of the people who care about this sort of thing. Georgia Southern is an underdog this weekend on the road in Conway, South Carolina. It'll probably be a very close spread for their final game of the season, hosting App State. JMU will be favored in these final 2 games. They just got to handle their business. And if Vegas is right, JMU will be in the Sun Belt Championship game. And odds are in their favor as well to host because of what you said. Woolridge, who is the best quarterback in the group of 5. I feel comfortable saying that. He's been playing like the best quarterback in the group of 5. He's the reason Louisiana is where they are. That is a tough blow. How do you overcome that in the final 2 games of the season? That'll be tough for the Raging Cajuns.
Yeah, and hopefully, again, you never want a team to go down because of an injury. So I hope they continue to do well. I would love to still play them in the Sun Belt Championship if we can get there, whether it's in Louisiana or in Harrisonburg. But I would love, it would be vindication because I think the last 2 years, the Sun Belt Championship would have been in Harrisonburg had we been eligible.
Yeah.
And so that would be a great turn of events for us to host. Now, of course, Marshall, they control their own destiny, right? So they are in the enviable position that we would love to be in, but we also get to play them. And it was just announced today, I don't know if you saw that, Jack, that the game against Marshall is now going to be broadcast on national TV on ESPNU in primetime at 8 p.m. And I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be there.
Whew. That's going to be an insane game. That is going to be an insane atmosphere.
If Georgia Southern loses this weekend, JMU wins, Marshall wins, that game is literally for the Sun Belt East crown.
Yes.
And potentially to host the Sun Belt Championship game. That will be a massive game. So looking forward to that. But let's talk about this ODU game. Let's do a quick postmortem on that. I think let's start off on offense. I just, if I were to say that my fan brain at multiple points in this game literally wanted to teleport to Norfolk and just be like, yo, Dean Kennedy, what is going on, my guy? But here's the thing. My athletic brain, my brain that knows better, my brain that says, you know what? Dean Kennedy has 10 times more information on that sideline than I have in my living room, right? That's the reality. Like, we all get emotional. I probably had 4 or 5 group chats going at the same time, and I was using words that my mother would not be proud of. But again, that was my fan brain. But that first drive, Jack Fitzpatrick, was picture perfect. It was super well scripted. Everything went exactly according to plan. And Wayne Knight took it in for a fantastic touchdown on an opening drive, which, again, I've told you this before. Anytime the opening drive looks really well done, right? Too easy, it's always a dogfight. So, I mean, I guess when you saw that opening drive, what were your thoughts? Were you like, yo, we're going to blow this team out?
No, I thought, like, because normally I'll hold my breath where you watch the first drive and then how does the defense then respond? And the defense responded by allowing ODU to march their way right down the field and score. There was a seam pass at one point that I was just like, how do we literally, that was all they did against Georgia Southern. How do you let them have that play open again? And it went for like 25, 30 yards. And I was like, this is going to be a long game. I hate this offense. ODU, this super spread doesn't make any sense. Just stop it, but you can't because it's so difficult to defend against. And from there, I was like, this is gonna be a dogfight. And I got real worried when then on the second possession for JMU, it lasted like 9 game minutes. It was a great drive, but ended in a field goal where they overcame some penalties, but each time a penalty was thrown, it was just the feeling of those issues are rearing their head again. They're having these penalty issues on the road in a conference game again. Can they overcome it? They did, but at times it was just definitely like, you know?
Well, I got to say, I love the long drive. Like, I have no problem with a nice long drive, control the ball, kick a field goal, we get points. I mean, obviously you love for that long drive to end in 6. But to get some points out of it, control and possess the ball, I thought that was fantastic. But of course, you know, the sun went down in this game, and then our offense literally, it looked like we've never played offense before. I think there was a stretch where we had 6 possessions and 6 punts in a row. And part of it was because ODU started dialing up the pressure. We have said countless times, and I think it is well known that the recipe against James Madison is that you bring 6, you stack the box, you bring 6, and they can't handle the pressure. And you saw in that game, we looked like we were not expecting 6 to come, and we had no answer for it. It was uncanny. Now, I got to give credit where credit is due. In the second half, we made some adjustments. We looked at the iPads and we looked at whatever, and we said, hey, when they bring pressure, let's get the ball out of our hands very quick. And obviously we missed that pass to Cam Ross. That was easy 6, right? I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but we connected on the one to Yamir Nice. And that was the turning point in the game. Did I call him Yamir Nice or Knight?
He played. I think he did play nice. I heard Knight with an S.
Okay. All right, good. So Alonzo Barnett, third of his name, connected with Yamir, Knight of the 7 Kingdoms. Shout out to my Game of Thrones fans. But Yamir had an amazing game, right? I mean, the dude had 8 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown, including the 68-yard go-ahead touchdown pass. So I guess when we finally connected on that, because again, Old Dominion's bringing 6, they're running cover 0 behind that blitz because that's really the only option. You got to man up and play, and Yamir just runs right by their corner. I think it was maybe a nickel, runs right by him. Easy throw and catch. What were your thoughts when you saw that? And I guess, you know, our ability to change the game around.
So I was in a bar in Charlotte and they missed the throw to Cam Ross. And I audibly say, how do you miss that? And there's at the same time that this game's going on, there's a pretty big South Carolina contingent, like in the booths next to us watching the South Carolina Mizzou game. And they would just kind of like look around and like see what happened and kind of like give you the acknowledging nod, like, oh, that's a tough one. And then whenever the next drive was and Yamir catches it, I went crazy in this bar. I'm just like, oh my, let's go finally. Cause I was holding my breath. The second I saw Alonso gear up to throw it, I held my breath because he had just overthrown Cam. And I'm like, if he overthrows 2 here, I'm going to be so upset. I
Yeah.
understand it is such a difficult throw and it's so much easier to be like, just hit it. Why can't you hit a basket from 50 yards away perfectly each and every time? But the fan brain, like you were saying, was just like,
Oh,
you're not going to get a guy that wide open ever again. And then they did. And so I was holding my breath. He hits it. I go absolutely crazy. And the bar all looked and kind of like smiled and laughed as they saw, the celebration in the end zone.
Yeah, I like you. I mean, honestly, and I lead the Alonzo Barnett fan club, but had he missed that one, I would have been like, cue Dylan Morris. Let's go. Get in the game, my guy. But honestly, like it was such a good play. And I think there's a couple of things about that play. So the first one, if you remember, Alonzo stood in the pocket. And the reason that throw was off target to Cam Ross, because he was in the pocket, he didn't have time to throw it. Literally, when he threw it, he got hammered. And had he had just one more split second, he could have held on to the ball for one more split second, put a little more air under the ball. Cam Ross would have run right underneath it. So he got sped up. Now, if you watch the second time, and this is where I think it gets very, very interesting. Alonzo Barnett has the trust and confidence in this coaching staff to change plays at the line of scrimmage. And guess what? For those of you who don't know, that pass to Yamir Knight was not the original play call in the huddle, right? It was not the original play call. Alonzo changed the call to that play because he recognized the blitz. That's all we've been asking, like recognize the blitz, make a play, right? Make a change. He recognizes the blitz. And then if you also watch what he does, Jack, he rolls out to the right a few steps because he's running away from the blitz that's coming from the left. That's where they're bringing the pressure. And he buys himself a little more time than he had on the Cam Ross pass. And he's able to buy himself enough time to get enough air on the ball and throw a perfect pass. I mean, that pass was absolutely perfect. Yamir ran right under it. And so that was a huge turning point in the game. And I think all the more important because AB3 made the call. Like he recognized the pressure and made the call. So, and by the way, going back to Yamir for a second, I mean, people will remember that touchdown catch, but that dude made some big time catches in this game. I mean, he made a catch on the sideline for a third down, first down pickup late in the game that was instrumental to keeping a drive going. I mean, the guy had an absolute ball game. He's a beast.
Him and his brother had themselves a grand old time down in Norfolk, Virginia.
Man, the Knight brothers of the Seven Kingdoms. Now, again, I also thought it was our best overall running game performance of the season. I think all of our running backs were super productive. Your boy Joby Mallory getting early minutes in the game, got a couple of carries, looked really good on some of his carries. I think he only got 3 carries, but he looked good. He ran forward, fell forward. I think he's going to, again, play a bigger role in the last 2 games of the season. Wayne Knight, by the way, was amazing. And I gotta be the first to say that when, last year, I feel like the last couple of years, like Wayne Knight's gone into the portal. And I've been like, so what? like, why do we care? Like, why do we care that Wayne Knight is in the portal? Well, I'll tell you why we care. This dude is a fantastic football player. He had 11 carries for 74 yards and a touchdown, but he also had a catch for a first down in the first half, I think. He caught a 17-yard pass on it was like 3rd and 15. And he catches like a quick screen and makes an incredible run where he almost gave away the first down, but somehow picks up the first down. So again, Wayne Knight, I really loved what he showed during this game. He had some super impressive runs. He showed a lot of good balance, a lot of good explosiveness, breaking balls to the outside, and just overall a lot of good vision. And lastly, our boy GP, coming back home to the 757. I think he's from Suffolk, right? He had a solid game. And this was, what I'm most impressed with about this game for GP. because obviously he led the team with 19 carries and 82 yards. This was more of a workman-like performance for him in the backfield. It felt like he was more of a workhorse. Now, I got to say, I did think he was hurt at one point in this game because there were like 5 or 6 series, where he was not in the game. I think I texted you guys. I was like, is GP hurt? And then I figured out maybe he's at his pitch count. He's got 13 carries and they're like, all right, you're shut down. You're done for the day. And then they decided to put him back in the game for that final drive, which he made some big runs in that last drive. So what did you think about the running back performance in that game?
Best running performance of the season so far, 233 combined yards between Mallory, Knight, Petaway, and Barnett. So great to see them starting to peak at the right time. They've been great all season, but now starting to really find that rhythm. I was curious about the same thing with Petaway. It was just like, where'd he go? He may have been hurt. Like I'm not really sure, but they could have had him out and then kind of, it's that type of hurt where, if we really need you, are you good enough to go back in? And because as a football player, as you never really want to be out of a game. You're always asking your coach, give me my helmet back. I want to go in. I want to go in.
That's right. So, are you hurt or injured? Right.
Yeah. So eventually I guess they were like, I guess we got to give George his helmet back. If he's saying he can go, we kind of need him right now. But that, and then with Wayne, you said it last year. He tweeted, I don't think he has a Twitter anymore, but he tweeted midway through the season, Wayne Knight has entered the portal, which is an all-time great tweet. Tweeting from your own personal Twitter in the third person. That right there, we should have been like, Wayne Knight's a dog. How is he not getting more run? That he is tweeting in the third person. This dude is going to be a monster for whatever team he landed in. Chesney, when Chesney retained him, it was more of a thought where I was like, oh, I bet that's just because they need the depth. He's not going to play, but they need the body. And Wayne Knight didn't get any good offers anywhere. You know why he probably didn't get any good offers? He had 9 carries in his first 2 seasons at JMU. As a freshman, he had 5 carries for -8 yards. As a sophomore, he had 4 carries for 23 yards. This year, 43 carries, 305 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, now he's got film. But, I always say, man, for these kids, the portal is such a dangerous move because you might be the 4th string running back at JMU, but then you go into the portal and you're the 100th running back in the portal. So I would take my odds as the 4th string running back at JMU versus, 1 out of 100 in the portal nationally. But man, I am glad that guy stayed because he's played a huge role for us. And, the other part of this, we got to shout out the offensive line. Of course, they still had a couple of pre-snap penalties that sort of drove us crazy, but they did a great job in the running game. Man, this offensive line for JMU controlled the line of scrimmage on offense. In fact, AB3 was only sacked 3 times, and I'm going to chalk all 3 of those sacks to coverage sacks. There was nobody open on any of those plays, and he kind of had to hold the ball, and then he tried to scramble, and he ended up getting tackled for losses. But I got to give Tanner Morris. I mean, the guy comes back and he made maybe, 3 of the biggest plays of the entire game. On 2 4th downs, he snaps the ball after AB3 and his cadence draws them offside. And nobody was expecting him to snap the ball, including AB3, because he bobbles the snap. I wish he doesn't bobble the snap there because at least then we get a free play and we get to throw it downfield. But Tanner Morris, the big one, in the 4th quarter, when we absolutely needed it to keep that drive going, I honestly believe that Ches was going to go for it. And I don't know if you heard him in the press conference. In poker, you can muck or show, right? Of course, he mucked and he didn't tell Dave Riggert. I think asked him, were you actually planning to go for it there? And he says, I can't tell you that. Right. I love that he mucks there. Right. And I'm no, poker player, but I know what all that means. I love that he mucks there. And you know what? I believe he was going to call a play and go for it, but we got them to jump, which was a huge play in that game.
Whew.
I mean, again, I want to get into my teleportation device and say, yo, punt the ball and play defense. Like, we're holding them. They've punted the ball 6 times in a row. Like, punt the ball and play defense. But I'm so glad that worked out. And all credit to Tanner Morse. And we also still had some issues with the snap. Like, I mean, there was a couple of really bad snaps in that game. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's, rust after being injured for the last game, but hopefully we get that resolved, because that, AB3 made maybe, again, one of the bigger plays of the game when the ball is snapped over his head, gets by him, and he somehow corrals it and gets on it in the backfield. So really, really big game. Now, a couple of other people that I do want to shout out, dude. Gabriel Hollingsworth with the 2-point conversion, right? On the muddle huddle, this freaking muddle huddle that, for no rhyme or reason, we go for 2 in these situations and we get them. We've gotten them every single time. And every single time it's been big in the game because Old Dominion was chasing that extra point the entire game. And, Gabriel, I think, is a great story. He was a walk-on. He played quarterback at Columbia University. He's an Ivy League guy, transfers to JMU, so takes a step down, maybe a little bit academically.
Whoa.
But a huge step up athletically. And, he's just a reserve tight end that goes into the game and scores on muddle huddle. So good on that, dude. I love that for him. And then our guy, Dylan Williams. Dylan Williams had 1 catch, but it was a good one. I thought that this play in that game, when AB3 connected with Dylan Williams on a little down and out, was maybe the like an NFL caliber play from both players. The throw from AB3 from the opposite hash to the other side of the field was a strong NFL throw. He threw the ball where only Dylan Williams could get it. Dylan Williams ran a great route and made a fantastic catch, going down low and digging it out, again, because AB3 threw it where only he could catch it. And I'm going to tell you something. Dylan Williams, I'm calling it right now. What is today? November 18th. It's my daughter's birthday. November 18th, 2024. Dylan Williams will be an all Sun Belt performer at James Madison University next year. This dude, I'm telling you, when I watch him play, when I watch him run routes, when I watch the way he catches the ball, he looks to me like a combination of Antoine Wells Jr. or a senior. Is he senior? He's senior or he's junior? He's junior.
I think he's junior.
Yeah, he's junior. All right. He has no kids. I mean, everybody's having kids now. I mean, they shouted out a kid on ODU for having a kid during the game. So I just, it's always confusing. But he reminds me of a combination of Antoine Wells Jr. and Elijah Surratt. Like, he looks to me like that kind of player. I'm telling you, this dude is a dog. I can't wait to see what he does next year.
You know how he's a dog?
How?
He's a wide receiver that is still wearing a number in the 80s. That is something that no wide receivers are doing nowadays. It's CeeDee Lamb and CeeDee Lamb. Right. I think those are the only guys wearing the 80s. So he's rocking the number 88. That's how you know he's a dog. But he runs routes really well. Shout out you, Delvin, though, for being able to see that throw, because the camera had it completely cut off on the ODU broadcast, where I didn't know if it was a completion or an incompletion for like a good solid 5 seconds. But he just has really sticky hands. And as a freshman, that is really, really good to see, because that's a trait that you don't see a lot of freshmen have. And he's very reliable. I don't know how many drops he has. I'd be shocked if it's more than 1 this season. He's made the most out of his limited reps, and I can see him taking a huge step forward from freshman year to sophomore year and being a key piece in a wide receiver room that's losing a good amount of production. So there will be opportunities next year for him to fill a role of a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2.
He's going to be a beast, man. I'm calling it right now. You watch what I tell you. Dylan Williams, all Sun Belt next year. And then we're going to have to come up with an NIL bag to keep this guy in Harrisonburg. Now I also
NIL bags.
I thought the rest of the receivers and tight ends, they didn't have the big numbers that Yamir had, but they all had big catches that kept some of those drives going. Taylor Thompson, big catches. Dollison had a few big catches. Cam Ross, few big catches. So again, a lot of really good stuff coming out of the offensive room. And I know, again, AB3 missed that throw to Cam Ross. He missed Dollison on a big third down conversion where we were trying to convert a third down that would have really kept the drive going. Just a short throw over the middle. But he still, again, made some big time throws in this game. He did exactly what we were asking him to do. And the big thing, I think, for AB3 in this game is that he was explosive with his legs. And we have not seen him look like that. We saw it a little bit last week, but this week we saw the fruits of that on a 50-yard run. Of course, that was huge. But he also had a scramble on that last touchdown drive that kept the drive going. And honestly, I did not see that scramble resulting in the type of yardage that it got, if not for his explosiveness. He couldn't have done that a few weeks ago on the bum ankle.
That was my reaction watching it. He got the corner. I was like, all right, cool. First down. All right, cool. 20 yards. All right, cool. There's no one in front of him. He's going to score.
He almost scored. And the final touchdown on that last drive, and this was huge, big third down call. And guess what? He calls his own number. He changes the play at the line of scrimmage. They had something else called in the huddle. He changes the play perfectly and walks into the end zone and does Steph Curry night-night. that was so huge, man. So I just, I love that the coaches have that kind of trust in him. As a redshirt sophomore, I love that he has that kind of trust and confidence in himself, but he also showed a lot of trust and confidence in the rest of his teammates because he stayed in the pocket and made some big time throws in this game. Let's transition over. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to kind of build on that explosiveness point, though, is it's now making the offensive line play so much better as well. Like when he was hurt, they were having some of their worst graded performances per PFF. And I think it was partly because they were trying to figure out how we're going to handle a blitz when it's coming, and partly because you have a sitting duck behind you, and that makes it so much more difficult to block because you know what is at stake back there. And so now he's looked a lot more healthy. He's looked a lot more explosive these last 2 weeks. And all of a sudden they're having some of their best graded performances, particularly in pass blocking. Josh Toner has had his best back-to-back week performances there in the guard spot. Cole Potts looked good at the right guard position. Jesse Ramil, Pat McMurtry, they've all looked really solid across the board. Their run blocking grades kind of took a slight dip back, but it really didn't matter because Wayne Knight and George Pettaway were so elusive. So that's fine. I mean, whatever you did this game, keep that rolling. And I think the reason for the success is they've started to find a rhythm as an offensive line, as a cohesive unit. And you're starting to have the Alonzo Barnett of old back there who can bail out maybe a missed block every now and then.
That is the absolute key. I mean, I think there was a play where he extended a play. He rolled out, he scrambled out of the pocket, and he should have been sacked like 3 or 4 times. He eludes all 3 sacks and then throws the ball away out of bounds. And I'm just telling you, 3 weeks ago, the guy could not have made that play. So that is a huge advantage for us, especially going into App State. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's go to the defense for a second. I think the game plan on defense, you talked about it earlier. ODU plays this huge, super spread out, 2 wide receivers, each to the boundary, almost into the boundary, and they throw a lot of quick screens. And those quick screens, because they're so spread out, are really hard to cover. And I think the game plan coming in was to shut down those wide receiver quick screens. So much so that it cost us in our sort of lane integrity in the run game. Like our run fits and run defense were so bad. We had people out of position. We had people in the wrong gaps. We had people super undisciplined on defense, and they were able to exploit that, especially in that second quarter, right? When they sort of made their little comeback. I mean, they were breaking off some really, really big runs. And so, and part of it, again, we were moving our linebackers out of the middle of the field, out to cover that wide receiver quick screen. And again, that was just creating a huge, huge liability for us. I do think this is a place where, Jacob Dobbs, he was dressed in warmups as if he was going to play. And then I think after halftime, switched back into street clothes and did not even make an appearance on the field. I think that was another place where we saw the absence of Jacob Dobbs actually showing up. So I guess for you, observations on defense, and do you have any, I guess, PFF grades for us? Because there was a lot of missed assignments. There was a lot of, undisciplined football, let's say, a lot of lane gap integrity that was compromised by this ODU offense.
That first half, you said it, they were gashing JMU on the ground. Their opening drive, they had 6 rushes for 45 yards. And then in the second quarter, they had 94 rushing yards. In the entire second half, they had 35 rush yards, 37 in the third quarter, -2 rushing yards in the fourth quarter. So the adjustments were made. They did a fantastic job. Jacob Dobbs, his absence does hurt, but I don't think it's terrible in that game. Like, I think just the way they play, it's difficult for the linebackers to have a huge impact in the game with it being so spread out. I think a huge reason why everything started to meld so much more in the second half is that play of Eric O'Neal and Kyrie Mans on the edge. The two of them just started to kind of go into takeover mode. And that was insane to see. Kyrie Mans, arguably his best game of the season in a JMU uniform. And it was, I'm just kind of flabbergasted at their adjustments at halftime. I mean, you go from getting gashed, like it was on pace to be a potential blowout loss. Like, I remember I was texting Bennett at halftime, and he texted, as he's a very pessimistic sports fan. He texts and he goes, "How many do you think we lose by? 21 points, maybe more?" Because he just felt like the game was falling out of hand. A friend of ours, Dom, was saying the exact same thing. And stupid me, optimistically, a few beers deep, I was like, we're going to win. It's going to be fine. Little did I know that Lyle Hemphill would have 6 straight punts to start the second half.
Yeah.
And it is just insane because you don't see teams do that. You don't see them from allowing over 150 rushing yards in the first half to allowing 35 in the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, man. Lyle Hemphill is a champ, bro. Like, I mean, I love that dude. I love how candid he always is. And he's just, I mean, he's also a dog in his own way. Like, he's super competitive. Like, if you talk to him, tell me.
Did you see him after the Chris Sheeran pick?
I did not. I missed it.
So they're all celebrating, and then you can kind of see in the lower section of the screen, he is yelling and getting hype and going crazy with what looks like Trent Hendrick and Jacob Thomas, because I think Trent Hendrick did forced Colton Joseph out and was a key piece in forcing that throw, I think, if I'm remembering that play correctly. And everyone's cheering with Chris Sheeran, and Hemphill goes and finds Trent Hendrick and just starts like getting hype with him. And I'm like, wow, in his sweatsuit, in his JMU hoodie, that is definitely just from his JMU hoodie and his JMU hat, which he definitely just bought at the bookstore when he first toured campus to be a coach. Because I'm 99% sure those are not team issues, and he's just chilling and just having a great time.
Yeah, like if you ever meet him, he kind of gives off like a surfer dude kind of vibe. Like, he's got long hair and he's just super chill. But he's a dog, man. And you know what else he likes? He likes people on defense that like to compete. And that's one of the things that I admire about this dude. And his team came out and competed in the second half. Because to your point, we got gashed in the first half. They somehow take the lead on us. They drove down the field pretty easily. And then we come out in the second half, and it is a totally different ball game. He dials up a lot more aggressive game plan in the second half, putting some pressure on Joseph. And to your point, they had, like, I think even you talked about the running yards going up until that final drive. They only had like 50 something yards in the entire second half, run or pass, which I thought was incredible. And they just forced some really big 3 and outs, almost to the point where when ODU was on offense, I was like, we are going to stop them. And that is not the norm. Eric O'Neal came up big. He had 9 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Jacob Thomas was down in the box making tackles. He had 9 total. And then Kyrie Mans, the Slim Reaper, had 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, totally took over the game at one point. He had big sacks when we needed them. And what's cool about Kyrie Mans is that they can move that guy around. Like, I don't think he's great with his hand in the dirt on the end of the line, but you let that dude stand up on the end of the line. I don't think there's an offensive tackle in this league that can keep him from getting to the quarterback. But you can also put him in like a weak linebacker position and let him get a full head of speed and put a move on an offensive tackle. And that person is absolutely hopeless in stopping Kyrie Mans. So I got to say, man, I love Eric O'Neal. We said at the beginning of the season, there would be some unsung heroes, like people that are making contributions on this team that we did not expect. I would say Eric O'Neal, Kyrie Mans, those are two of the unsung, unhyped heroes that came in that are having huge seasons for JMU.
Yeah, Kyrie Mans started his career at Maine, played some time under Deion Sanders in Colorado, didn't have crazy gaudy numbers at Colorado. So when he transferred in, I was kind of like, all right, a failed P4 player is coming to JMU. Like, I guess he's trying to revitalize his career. And I don't think it was that he was a failed P4 player. I think there was just better talent, or maybe he didn't necessarily fit the defensive scheme that was being played in Colorado, because he is a different type of player. And he has been key in Lyle Hemphill being able to create so many different looks, disguise his blitzes, and do all of these exotic type of sets that we've seen Lyle Hemphill do this season as the defensive coordinator. His play, along with Eric O'Neal, have been, I think, the biggest reasons for the success overall of that defense. They've been kind of the skeleton key that can unlock anything. And it's been really great to see. I don't know about you, Delvin. There's been times this season where I go, who's that? Who's lined up? Who's lined up on like the slot receiver wearing number 11? And then I'm like,
Bro.
oh, wait, that's what is he doing out there? And then he blitzes and you're like, oh, that's what he's doing out there. Okay.
Yeah, there's been a ton of times. Now, I will say doing the broadcast for ESPN Plus has forced me to get to know all the players. But honestly, bro, it's hard to keep track of who all these players are running in and out on this defense. But man, I thought the entire defense played really well. Barksdale had a good game. Jordan Taylor, Torres Jones, again, filling in for Jacob Dobbs, had a big game. Emmanuel Bush got another sack. And, and Sheeran, who was also, I think, from the 757, had a huge game. He had 6 tackles. He had 3 solo tackles. He had a tackle for loss. And he also had the big interception, which led to 3 points. And this is where, again, I said it was a gritty, gutsy performance by the players and the coaches. But I also think that Coach Chesney and company are learning to play in this league. Because you know what? You get turnover, you go get points. I know we were disappointed that we didn't get 7 out of that interception, but we got 3 points. And Jack, by how many points did we win this game?
3.
We won it by 3. And if we had just had this mentality at Monroe, and I know hindsight is 2020, but we didn't take the points. And when you're on the road in the Sun Belt, it is very hard to win. In college football, it's even harder to win in this league. I think you're on the road, take the points. And that 3 points that we got off that turnover was instrumental in helping us win the game. Something else that was really, really weird was that kid Page, like their star receiver. And I thought this guy was a really good player. Somehow, inexplicably, late in that game, he just has 2 of the biggest drops. Right? Like, I don't know if you remember this. Like he's running across the field wide open. He's going to catch a pass, and he could possibly go for 50, 60 yards, and he just drops it. And then he has another one for a big first down pickup and just drops it. So I don't want to give our defense too much credit. Our guy, Isaiah Page or Elijah Page, whatever his name was, that dude helped us out a lot. That was amazing.
He was killing us to start the game too. I mean, they were getting to him in the screen game. They were handing the ball off to him, and he was racking up the yards. Colton Joseph too helped out a lot. He went 9 for 21 for 189 with a pick. He had some very inexplicable incompletions where I was sitting there and I was like, thank goodness he's off today, because if he completes 50% of these passes, we're losing. Like,
Yeah.
and credit to the defense. The defense plays a part in that, of course. It's not just because Joseph couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but there were a few times where like clean pocket or he's rolling out and it's a pass you make in practice. It's kind of a routine type of play and he would just miss. And I was just like, all right, thank goodness this dude is showing that he's a redshirt freshman today.
Well, and again, redshirt freshman, I think Lyle Hemphill was confusing him with coverages.
Yeah.
If you watch it, we were putting guys up on the line like we were bringing blitzes, and in Joseph's mind, all right, they're probably playing man behind this because they're bringing 4 or 5. Those people drop out. Kyrie Mans and Eric O'Neal are still getting pressure on him, but he's got nowhere to throw the ball because we have 7 in coverage. And again, I just think he was very confused at times with what coverage we were running, and it really, really showed. So credit to Lyle Hemphill on that. That dude's a freaking genius, man. I just hope we can keep him in Harrisonburg. Can we get him an NIL deal, like a to the house NIL package to stay in Harrisonburg as the defensive coordinator? Because I got dough on it.
Can we do a package deal, him and Eric O'Neal?
Yeah, I'm in, man. I'm totally in. But shout out to Chris Sharon, man. I'm glad he got his first interception of the season. Special teams really quick. Noe Ruelas, again, 2 big field goals, 6 big points from that guy. The blocked punt is a little worrisome because I think is that our 3rd blocked punt of the season that we've had blocked? We had one blocked at North Carolina. We had this one
and
blocked.
they came in unblocked. Like Ryan Hansen had no chance of getting that one off, and the defense, just the special teams of ODU just came in and that was at a very pivotal point in the game too, where like you punt that away, you hope your defense stands, or even if they don't stand, you hold them to 3, whatever it is, you're all of a sudden in control.
Yeah.
Instead, like everything flipped, and that's when ODU started to find that rhythm offensively.
Yeah, that totally changed the momentum of the game. On that block kick, you would hope that Weathersby, in that moment, instead of recovering it on the 3, just swat that ball out of the back of the end zone. Take the safety, let's kick the ball, and let's play defense. I know in that moment, it's kind of hard, again, for him. He's like, oh, snap, we just got a kick blocked. It's really hard to have that awareness, but really was hoping he would swat that out of the back of the end zone and just let us play defense and just give them 2 points. I'm okay with 2, but 7 was inevitable there. Cam Ross, very close. I'm telling you, Cam Ross, very close to returning another kick for a touchdown in that game. He had some moments. I think he has a potential NFL career as well because of his speed and his ability to return kicks. The only problem is nobody returned kicks in the NFL anymore. But back in my day, my NFL, Cam Ross is an NFL player because he has an opportunity to return kicks. Yamir Knight, great job on punt return. The dude saved us massively on field position. When in years past, we had punt returners who would let those balls bounce and just cost us 10, 15, 20 yards on field position. So, him catching those punts is a lot like, changing your tires on your car. Like, it's not anything special. You don't even really notice it. It's not going to make the car run better, but it's absolutely necessary. Yamir Knight did a bang-up job catching punts during that game. And then Ryan Hansen, not his best performance, but I honestly think they were trying to punt away from Page. Like that kid Page, I'm telling you, man, you saw the one return that he had. That dude is pretty dangerous when he catches a punt and he's got room in the open field. And I think they were just trying to directionally kick away from him at times, which didn't result in some of Ryan Hansen's best punts. So let's final thoughts on ODU before we talk about App State.
JMU runs Virginia. Take that, ODU. It was a really great game. I'm excited for the years to come with these two teams because they seem to always play each other exceptionally well based off of the last 2 games. Hopefully Ricky Ronnie stays around because I truly think he's building something in Norfolk. The fans really are pissed at him right now. They need to win their last 2 to be bowl eligible. But I think Ricky Ronnie's the coach. I think he's a good coach. ODU stick with him. And I think this rivalry will become something really good. If these two teams play each other with Chesney and Ronnie at the helm, after Ronnie's yelling F you across the sidelines, Chesney's going for 2, onside kicking it. There could be some bad coaching blood between the two teams.
Yeah, that was wild. I still don't know why he was. I mean, I get it. Like, get fired up. I love it. Whatever gets your team fired up. And I also think it's because he thinks he called it. And I will say, in his defense, that was a pretty predictable onside.
1,000%.
Like 1,000%. Like, I looked at my wife. We're sitting on the couch. I'm like, we're gonna onside this. And our kickers got to sell that a little more. Like, he looked like he was approaching the ball to kick an onside, and you got to approach the ball like you're going to kick it downfield, and then just, because there was a gap there in that section where he was trying to onside it. Their receiving team never bought it, ever, not once. Nobody in that stadium thought they were going to kick the ball deep there.
We all do that in Madden. That is literally the what you do every time you're playing Madden against your friend. You're down a score, and you're like, oh, let me try and steal one here. Like that's what everyone does.
Yeah, it seemed very, very predictable. But we didn't give up any points there. Like, the defense held, forced them into a punt, and so no blood there. So I'm okay with it. And by the way, I also love the fact that, Ches is like, yo, let's go for this, man. We're down. Let's make a splash. Who cares? But I agree with you. I think Ricky Ronnie is a good coach. I think, you look at their record. I think they put a graphic on the screen. They've lost like 22 one-possession games over the last 3 years, which is out of control. And for those of you who think, hey, this is a 4-5 ODU team, who cares? This 4-5 ODU team was literally a heartbeat away from beating South Carolina earlier in the season before they went to their phenom freshman quarterback. If Colton Joseph plays that game, they probably win that game. So anyway,
Ronnie's got to figure that out.
Now let's talk about, I think, a bigger rivalry game. Jack, if I had to ask you if you could only win one, either ODU or App State, you got to lose one or the other. You could only win one. Which game are you choosing?
I want to win App State.
Yeah, I want to win App State too, man. Like, I'll take a L to ODU. I know the whole, we've beaten 20 straight Virginia teams and blah, 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 and the royal rivalry. But this game in particular means so much more to me. And so it's another rivalry. They are coming off a bye. We're going into a hostile environment. It is a tough place to play. And listen, JMU fans, whether we want to admit it or not, App State is the model. They are the standard in the Sun Belt Conference and maybe the G5, save for Boise State. I mean, they've had enormous success. They've gotten some huge Power 4 wins, SEC opponents, Big Ten opponents. They have great attendance. They're averaging 34,000 fans this year, and they are down this year, right? They had a hurricane that came through and wiped out half the town, and still 34,000 people are showing up to that stadium, and they don't leave at halftime. App State is the model. So with that said, I do believe that this game is also huge for recruiting, maybe bigger for recruiting than even the ODU game, because I believe nationally, right? On a regional level, there are some kids that ODU's recruiting that we're going to recruit. But when we think about some of those national, maybe highly touted 3-star kids who get a lower P4 offer, like a Vanderbilt or a Duke, NC State kind of offer, those are the kids that might decide to come to a G5 school like JMU. And they would choose between a JMU and an App State. So this game, I think, is also very, very big for recruiting implications nationally. Now, again, of course, their area has been through a lot. So these guys are playing for a lot more than just a win over rival JMU. They are also playing for bowl eligibility, right? Ooh. They need to win these last two in order to get eligible for a bowl, particularly because their game against Liberty was canceled. So they only have 11 games this season. Now, Jack, let me ask you, do you think that App State thinks of JMU as a rival?
Yes.
You do?
Do I think JMU thinks of App State as a rival?
No. Do you think App State thinks of us as a rival? I
Oh,
know
yeah,
we hate App State,
I
right? Like, we want to
100%.
beat App State.
I think they do. I think there is bad blood, not like rivalry, the rivalry bad blood, not actual bad blood. I think both of these teams understand that they are the top. These are the two top teams historically, currently in the Sun Belt. And I think they know for most years, maybe not this year, but for most years, you're going to have to go through that other team to win the East.
Yeah.
And I think both teams kind of understand it. And then not only that, in men's basketball, there's this feeling of like hatred between the two because they were our two conference losses a year ago. I think in those two sports, there's a lot of bad blood. There's a lot of like, we want to beat you. And I think it goes both ways. I think App might feel like, oh, well, last year we swept you in men's basketball and football. So like, what does it mean? But I think they know in the back of their heads, they're like, oh, the last time you came to Boone, you 28-3'd us.
Wow. And that was, I mean, listen, there have been some epic battles between App State and JMU, and I'll just talk about present history, right? The playoff game, and you can help me on the years because I can't remember years that way. I think it was 2008, maybe. Was it 2008 playoffs at Boone? Maybe
7.
2007.
It was 7 or 8.
Yeah, no, it was 7. Yeah, it was definitely 7. We go to Boone. I'm there. I'm in the stands, and we have a chance to win this game. We're in their plus territory. We're like inside the 10-yard line, if I remember correctly. We fumble going in late in the fourth quarter, and that would have been the go-ahead touchdown. And it was heartbreaking. I remember being there. Right then and there, I was like, I hate this team. I hate these people. I hate black and gold. I hate all of it. And then the very next year, they come to Harrisonburg, and we're down 21-0 at halftime. The opening kick after halftime, Scotty McGee takes the kick to the house, and then we proceed to go win that game. I think it was 28-21. Like, I don't think they scored in the second half. We scored 28 unanswered. Amazing football game. And then, of course, we didn't play them again because they moved up to FBS, and then we finally played them at App. We're down 28-3. At the half, same type of comeback game. And I'm literally saying I was in Kentucky on a bourbon trip at the time. And so I'm watching the game with a bunch of my friends, maybe 4 or 5 American whiskeys deep. And I say to my boys, I'm like, yo, we did this before. We can do it again. We're going to come back. And somehow magically we came back and won that game. And then, of course, last year, College Game Day on campus, we're 10-0. Kurt Signetti and company lay an egg. By the way, ironically, Kurt Signetti's 10-0 now, and he's got to play Ohio State. I mean, you don't know. His signature win's not looking so signature anymore. I don't know if you noticed that. I mean, Nebraska was the one they hung their hat on, and Nebraska's 5-5 now. They've lost 5 straight. So, I mean,
that's the impact of playing Kurt Signetti's boys. You just can't bounce back.
Give me a break. It's like, yo, we got a signature win over time. You've beaten nobody ranked. But anyway, neither here nor there. They get an opportunity this week. But again, JMU App State, amazing rivalry. So I'm looking forward to it. Now, I think the key on offense for JMU, I think we got to get that running game going again. We got to show the exact same running game prowess that we showed this past week. And teams have been very effective against this App State defense on the run. There are teams that have gashed them at times. And the one that I would point to is that Marshall game. There's 2 games actually that I would point to. If you look at the Marshall game, go back and watch that on film. Marshall, their quarterback, Braylon Braxton, who is a running sort of quarterback, dynamic guy who can throw and pass, sort of in the mold of AB3. I would take AB3 over this guy any day. But this guy, Braylon Braxton, had 140 yards rushing against this App State defense. He averaged 9.3 yards a carry and had 2 touchdowns. And they were not scrambles like, let me get out of the pocket. These were designed runs where he just gashed them for big plays. The other one is South Alabama. South Alabama, as a team, had 320 yards rushing. Their running back had 116 yards rushing, and their quarterback, Gio Lopez, who again is kind of like an AB3 style quarterback, had 105 yards rushing. Even FCS, East Tennessee State, had a running back that went over 126 yards against this App State defense. So I think the key for us on offense is getting some running game going, get a play action going. And now, our speed versus their speed, I think we win. I think we hit them with some explosive plays, either in the run game, but I think if we get the running game going consistently, it will open up the passing game. I expect, and again, this was Yamir Knight's week, right? This past week in the slot. I expect Cam Ross and Omarion Dollison to have big games this week. Those dudes are going to take the top off of this App State defense. They are going to have big, big explosive plays. So your thoughts about App State and their defense? How do they grade out, EPA, all that good stuff?
You're calling your shot. I'm calling mine. Wayne Knight over 100 yards rushing.
Wayne Knight over 100?
Wayne Knight will have himself a $100 bill. He will have himself a game because, Delvin, there's 134 FBS schools in the nation. App State ranks 132nd in EPA allowed per rush.
What? All right. So I didn't have any of these EPA numbers when I made my notes for this game, but 132nd. So dead last. So let me make sure.
Not dead last. Let's give him a little credit.
Okay.
Second away from dead last.
Second to dead last. All right. So Larry, let me, tell you what I understand about EPA. So every time a team lines up to run the ball, they are taking points. No, we are scoring points against this App State defense. There's like X amount of points going on the scoreboard for the opposing team.
0.19.
0.19.
Which is an insanely high number. Typically, defenses hold opponents to a negative EPA per rush. That's typically what it is. JMU holds opponents to negative 0.08 per rush, which is 25th best in the nation. App State is allowing you to essentially score 0.2 points every time you're touching the ball. So you are getting what? Let me do the quick math. 20% of a point. Like that is an insane number.
So let me do it another way. Because again, I was told there would be no math, but I'm gonna try to do math. If they are giving up 0.2 points every time we run the ball, is that what you said?
That's what.
So if we run the ball 30 times in this game, what does that mean?
What's the quick math on that? 30 times 0.19.
I don't think that works.
Would be 5. You would be expected to add 5.7 points to your score.
Got it. Okay.
So based off of the game flow, it's a bunch of different things that go into it. If we're getting into the real nitty gritty of it, but there's game flow. So you have the points you kind of score. So say you both teams start at 21 or something, you then would score 5.7 points above your expectation because of what you were able to do against the run.
Got it. All right. So either way, what you said and what I said, JMU should be able to run the ball against this team. And I think running the ball against this team opens up the explosive plays. And you said, Wayne Knight goes for 100. I'm going to say George Pettaway also goes for 100. And I'm going to say AB3 goes for plus 70. And that plus 70 might be on one play. All right. I do think we have an opportunity there. Now on defense, if I look at if I look at our defense and I look at their offense, I think, the key against controlling this offense is also limiting their explosive plays. I mean, this team thrives on explosive plays. Every time I see them play, I'm reminded of North Dakota State, who every time we played them, there always seemed to be like this 25, 30-yard chunk plays. It'd be a drag route to a tight end across the field, opposite side, and they just pick up these big, massive chunk plays, or there'd be a handoff to a running back, just a very unassuming off-tackle running play, and it goes for 20, 25 yards. This team is a chunk play offense. But if we can limit those explosive plays and make them drive the ball down the field by nickeling and diming us, I don't believe they nickel and dime us all the way down successfully to score points. That does mean, though, that we'll have to solve some of those run fit issues that we had this past week, right? So we got to have, because I think they got some home run hitters in their backfield. We've got to come up, make those tackles when they are there. We missed some tackles this past week that led to big runs. We make those plays this week. We really, really handicap their offense. Unfortunately for them, their leading receiver, Caden Robinson, I shouted him out on the podcast 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, he is out for the season. I can't quite remember. I think it's some sort of leg injury. Really unfortunate for him, man, because that dude was having a really good season. By all accounts, he is a great kid. Hate to see that happen to him. But that's really going to change the game for them somewhat. But I can also tell you that App has playmakers all over the field. So it is a next man up situation for them. And their signal caller, Joey Aguilar, the key on defense, I believe, is that we have to force him into making some bad decisions. Joey had a fantastic year last year. He's having a really good year this year. Last year, he was the Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year. I got to give him props also for staying at App State. I think that kid could have left App State, gone and got a bag somewhere else. And he was like, nah, man, I came here from California. I'm staying loyal to this program. What a fan base to play for. And again, that also plays into a kid's decision to stay at the university. So we don't boo our players, right? So again, very, very dope that he decided to stay in Boone. And he's having another good year. But I do think he is susceptible to making some bad decisions, right? He's thrown for 2,500 yards this year. He's got 19 touchdowns, but he's also thrown 12 interceptions. And Jack, if you watch his 12 interceptions, they are not bad luck. The ball got tipped and somebody else caught it. It's literally the type of interception where, as a fan, you're watching the TV screen and you're like, why would you throw that pass? There's 3 people there, right? And so I think what I said earlier about confusing Colton Joseph at ODU, Lau Hemphill disguising coverages, disguising blitzes, confusing the young quarterback. I think there's also an opportunity to confuse Joey Aguilar in this game and force him into making some just stupid decisions. So how does the App State offense grade out, Jack?
Offense grades out fine. Like they are fine according to all of the EPA statistics. And I think that kind of aligns with the eye test as well, where there are times when you're impressed by them. Caden Robinson was a great wide receiver for him this year, but unfortunately, like you said, he's out. They're slightly below average in the passing game. They're a good running team led by our Amani Marshall, I believe his name is. But I mean, just overall, there's nothing about this App State team that blows you away, which is really interesting considering they brought back so much production from the year ago. I guess when you bring back production, it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion that you'll have the same success as a year ago. We're looking at you, Virginia Tech, but there are some question marks around App where their defense is abysmal. Their offense is fine, but I think their defense is so bad that they're just putting their offense in tough spots to succeed.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think they are on the right side of the season right now, though. I think they got some momentum. They did beat the same ODU team that we just beat. They beat them 2 weeks ago. And so they're coming off the bye week. They're going to be well rested. They're going to be healthy, even though Caden Robinson's out. I think they got 2 of their top tight ends who have been out for most of the season coming back. Maybe a couple of offensive linemen who have been banged up who are coming back. So again, make no mistake about it. This game, throw the records out. This will be a big time matchup. I plan to make the trip to Boone. And I am really excited about it. My good friend who works in my practice with me, he is a huge App State fan. He's an App State alum. He says that App State also sees us as a rival. So I wanted to see what your perception was. He said that App State does see us as a rival, but they don't hate us still. They don't hate us as much as they still hate Georgia Southern. But they said that we are getting there very quickly. So I think a win in Boone this week will cement our hate and disgust with the App State faithful.
I love it.
All right, Jack. Well, you know what time it is. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right, man. This week's What You Talking About, Willis, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I feel like this episode is running long. I am cooking tonight, Jack. But this What You Talking About, Willis, comes from Heather Dinnick, who is a senior writer for ESPN. And in talking about the college football playoff, she said, as much as people keep throwing out the word elimination game every week, I would really hesitate to eliminate a 3-loss SEC team. Heather, what you talking about, Willis? I mean, listen, I know that there is a big brand bias, especially when it comes to the SEC, but a team that loses 3 games should be eliminated from the conversation. I don't care if they're in the SEC or the CAA or the NEC or the Sun Belt. Like, a 3-loss team should not be in consideration for this playoff. And again, everybody wants to say the SEC, all the conference beats up on one another, but so does every conference. That's why it's called conference play, right? The Sun Belt beats up on each other. And so again, I know the SEC, everybody wants to believe that they are the elite of the elite. I do believe they have talent, amazing talent on those rosters. That does not necessarily mean that those teams are better than the others. It just means that they put more people in the stadiums, and the people that vote on these committees actually vote for these teams to be top 25. So it looks like they get a bunch of top 25 wins, when in reality, who knows how good some of these teams actually are. So what you talking about, Willis? A 3-loss SEC team, you're out, in my opinion. Jack, do you agree?
Oh, 100%. I hate it. It's Greg Sankey. Get out of here, man. Get out of the pockets of ESPN. Stop. It's just so freaking annoying. Like, what are you supposed to do if you're not a school? Like, also miss me with all of that, SEC. You're not that good this year. You're kind of bad. And like, okay.
Exactly. Well, I mean, again, I know it doesn't work this way, but Georgia State, a bad Sun Belt team, beat Vanderbilt, who beat Alabama. I mean, case closed. Like, any given Saturday, any team can win in college football. In the SEC, the big difference is that there's 90,000 people at Texas showing up at those football games, 100,000 people showing up at those games, and there's 25,000 at JMU. That's the big difference, right? Period. So anyway, I get frustrated with that. By the way, did you see that JMU received 17 votes in this week's coaches poll?
I love
17 votes.
And unfortunately, that means Chesney could not get his entire coaching staff to also vote.
That's right. So somebody's catching on, man. And we also received votes in the AP poll this week. I don't remember exactly how many votes, but it was a substantial number of votes. And by the way, 8-2 at this point in the season, masterful job. If I had told you that we'd be 8-2, you'd be excited. Now we got a chance to finish 10-2 and sneak in the back door of the Sun Belt Championship. That would be phenomenal. All right, Jack, it's time for us to take it to the house. Now, of course, all this talk this past week about the royal rivalry and AB3's comments after the game really got me thinking about how competition and rivalries can force us to elevate our performance, how they can inspire us to be our very best. I'm reminded of my very first personal rivalry in Little League sports, a super talented, crazy athletic young man named Cootie. His real name was Jermaine Simmons, but everyone called him Cootie. And unlike the imaginary childhood disease, no one could catch this Cootie because he was insanely fast. But in the tiny world of Little League baseball, Little League basketball, and Little League football in little old Martinsville, Virginia, Cootie was the man. Every time he did something in a game, people would ooh and ah. Grown-ups who didn't even have kids on the team would show up at a Little League game to see Cootie play. And so at a very young age, I created my life's mission statement: beat Cootie, because this dude was the best. And if I could beat him, then that meant I was the best. And I'm not exaggerating, JMU Nation. Every moment I spent in the weight room, every extra moment spent after practice, every run up stadium stairs was in service of beating Cootie. We actually played on the same AAU basketball team for 2 years. Well, he played and I rode the bench. But we had some epic battles in high school, especially in basketball and football. Both of us mutually acknowledging the other as a rival. Both of us giving it our best. But me getting the upper hand our junior and senior years, both on the hardwood and gridiron. I beat Cootie. At JMU, my Cootie became Brian Westbrook. And every time we played Villanova, there was extra added motivation. Again, epic battles. Both of us acknowledging the other as a rival. When I got to the NFL, Westbrook was there again in the NFC East. Me with the Giants and him with the Eagles. My rival was now on the team of my team's most hated rival. And now I had to play against him twice a year. One game that was particularly memorable was the 2003 game in the Meadowlands. Westbrook returned a punt 84 yards for a touchdown with 1:34 left for the game winner. It sucked to lose. It sucked even more that it was Westbrook. I didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the entire Sunday. But that Monday morning, I went to the practice facility extra early for a workout and to watch film in isolation. Now, this wasn't an unhealthy obsession with competition. This was a drive and a desire to be the best, to compete at all times, but especially against a rival. It's why in rivalry games, the records don't matter, because there's more than just winning that's driving the performance in those games. It's why Michael Jordan invited Leroy Smith, the guy who beat him out for the final spot on his high school varsity basketball team his sophomore year. That dude, he invited him to his Hall of Fame induction ceremony, not to be petty, as the Jordan haters like to say, but to acknowledge him and thank him for the extra motivation to become the GOAT. You see, Leroy was his Cootie. So, of course, I have adopted this mentality into my career as a financial planner. Yes, I still have a Cootie, a guy whose practice I admire so much that I want to create a better one. It forces me to be a better practitioner, to focus on the small things, to constantly grow and elevate my game, to learn more. And my rival doesn't even know it. Now that I've ventured into broadcasting, I also have a Cootie in that world. And I've gone back and watched every single game he's done this season. And I talk to myself in the mirror constantly and practice my cadence and enunciation in my car while I'm driving, because I want to be better than him. And he'll probably never actually know how hard I'm working to beat him. Several years ago, when I was serving as the managing director for my company's South Florida Financial Group, I was responsible for making the final hiring decisions for new financial advisors who wanted to join our firm. And there was always one question you could ask me in your interview that would all but guarantee you weren't getting hired. That question was, what does the average advisor in the firm earn? See, the people I wanted to hire didn't care about being average. They were the people that asked, what does the top advisor in the firm earn? Because those people understand that to be average is to be the best of the worst, but the worst of the best. Many of us grew up in sports with this mentality, but for some reason, we abandon it when we get to the real world. But why do we compare ourselves to the worst performers in our companies, but not the best performers? Do we actually believe, as Teddy Roosevelt once said, that comparison is the thief of joy? Why can't comparison be the motivation to be the best? And I know that in today's society, where players are all friends and post each other on their social media accounts and wear, each other's jersey after the game and partner up to create super teams, maybe that's a bad take. Maybe I'm a little too much of a Gen X raised by baby boomer parents. But I can promise you this, JMU Nation, if you want to be the best, if you want to be super successful, you have to compete, period. And that starts with finding a rival that pushes you to be great. Find yourself an Old Dominion. Find yourself an App State. Find yourself a Cootie. And that's it, JMU Nation. We have taken it to the house. Thanks for letting me get on my soapbox, man. I really had to get that off my chest. That may be the longest to the house commentary ever. But again, I think very, very important. Jack, tell the people how they can like, follow, subscribe, do all that good stuff for To the House and the JMU Sports News Network.
Specifically for Cootie. Cootie, if you're out there listening, I need you to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can subscribe on YouTube as well. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Just type in the JMU Sports News Network and it will pop up. You can follow To the House on Instagram and Twitter. Just type in JMU To the House in the search bar and it'll pop up. Subscribe, leave a review, leave a comment. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Man, you joke, man. I'm telling you, this Cootie kid, man, the dude was amazing, bro. He should have gone to the NFL. He went into the military. I think he actually lives in the Norfolk area, which is interesting. But sorry,
he didn't have the work ethic you had. He didn't have a Cootie for himself to drive him to get to the National Football League, to make it at the college levels.
Maybe not. I mean, the dude was a phenomenal athlete, though, man. He was incredible. But yo, we are going to Boone. Let's go get a win. We got 2 more to get. Let's go. We can do this. Let's take it to the house. Go Dukes.
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News Podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.